people I see that are signing in, but we'll go ahead and kick it off for those who are ready. Again, my name is Bill Mork. I work with Quorum on the sales side, and if you've been in one of our webinars before, you've probably seen my face and heard my voice. Also, another familiar face will be Gabriel, who's our VP of Product of Quorum and can help answer the disaster recovery side of this conversation. And then also, we're really fortunate to have Michelle joining us, who has a ton of experience helping clients build incident response plans and find other vulnerabilities in their business continuity and disaster recovery plan. Michelle, is there anything else you'd like to share about yourself that might be helpful for our guests?
Sure. So I have been in the cyberspace for almost 30 years. So we really walk alongside our clients in their cybersecurity journey because nobody's in the same place. So I love this conversation about incident response, disaster recovery, because if we can make things repeatable, then it keeps the bad guys out, or at least at bay.
Agreed.
That's right. And so today's conversation will be mainly around incident response plans and how they relate to DR and business continuity planning. We do want to keep it as engaged as we can. So if anyone has specific topics or questions that they'd like answered, please send those via chat, and I will get them to our moderator, Gabriel or Michelle, as quickly as I can. To kick off things, I have a couple of preloaded questions that were sent over from guests who've signed up for the webinar. And maybe just to kick things off, and Michelle, maybe you want to take this one. What exactly is an incident response plan, and what makes it so important to organizations?
I'll first start with practice makes perfect. And when you're in an emergency, you need that document to go to pull it off the shelf or wherever it is, because all of a sudden, ransomware, denial of service, all of those kinds of things, you need to have repeatable processes. So if you can document, who's supposed to be in the room, what are the different steps for different things, having different playbooks for each type of incident is really important. Then you can practice. And again, as long as we can make it repeatable, we're not firefighting. And when you're in a crisis, you don't want to firefight. So documentation is so important on building that incident response plan, especially the preparedness side. And yes, during the incident, you need to have it, but it's the preparedness so everybody is on board.
That's great. And
did you add anything to that?
Yeah, there's a couple things. The incident response plan is critical for knowing how the company is going to react in these situations. A disaster recovery plan, on the other side, is the steps you're going to do to get back to production. So knowing what you're going to do on that side is not the same as knowing how you're going to handle the incident. And these are the criteria that you really have to build a consistent and honestly a good BCP plan. And Michelle said it very well. Testing is the key. IT departments are great at testing, are okay at testing their DR plans, but nobody's really testing their incident response plan or continually updating their risk assessments, which are also the other kind of tenet to that good BCP planning. So she's absolutely right. Testing is the key, and it's hard because that usually involves people at a different part of the organization coming together at the same time, and that's always a struggle, in a production environment. So,
well, with that being said, what are the steps that an IT manager or director should take to create a good incident response plan, or who should they involve?
Well, first, it shouldn't be the IT director. It should come from every other facet of the company, because those are the people that have to make those decisions. It's the CEOs and the executives and the CFOs. They're the ones that are going to be responsible for owning that incident response plan. That's probably the first mistake that most people make, is they make it the IT person's responsibility, and it almost has nothing to do with them. The IT person is building their disaster recovery plan on what to do with the servers and whatnot. The incident response plan is more, how do you communicate to the public? How do you communicate to your users? How do you communicate? I mean,
So,
those
Gabe,
are all parts of that.
I would respectfully disagree with that, if that's okay.
Sure.
So, when we look at incident response plans, it is in the throes of a ransomware attack, or
Mhm.
it is, and it all falls on the IT people's shoulders, right?
Sure.
What tools they have, what backup systems do they have? Can we count on them? So, looking at what we do with our clients is help them create or develop the control framework. What is that? Are they going to use NIST CSF? Are they going to use ISO if they're international? Are they going to use, whatever it is, the 800-53, and then build the program on that. And the incident response plan is one piece of the information security program plan, right?
Sure.
And so we need to define roles and responsibilities, and that's what you were talking about, Gabe. So, senior management definitely needs to be involved. They need to understand. And TowerWall, we actually do whiteboard sessions, incident response whiteboard sessions with senior management, because they need to know what they're supposed to be able to, or what they need to come to the party with. But the IT team and the CIO and all, they need to know who's in charge of what and when
Right.
to say it's an incident or a breach, because we won't want to call it anything, and even to when to engage your cyber insurance. So all
Sure.
of those things, the roles and responsibilities, what are the procedural levels, and then the practice, like what we talked about before. So it's all facets. It's that CERT team too, right? The cybersecurity
Right.
team that you put together
Right.
during an incident.
Yeah, I think you worded that much better than I did. I agree. Yeah.
Again, respectfully disagree.
Well, kind of with that in mind, is there something that you think people commonly miss out on or don't have included in their incident response plan that they should?
I'll give you a perfect example. So I had a company that I worked with years ago now, and they were building their DR plan and their incident response plan and their full BCP. And I worked with them very extensively on building it all out. But what I made the mistake of, and of course this was a million years ago, is I trusted what they were telling me. So the IT team was telling me, hey, the server can be down for 8 hours while we rebuild it. Well, then we pulled the CEO in and we asked him, hey, how long can you go without mail? We've been doing this for weeks and weeks and planning it out. And he goes, oh, maybe 20 minutes. And so the reality versus the expectation was totally wrong. And that changed everything we were doing. And so getting your information from everywhere in the company is the critical piece to making a consistent plan.
And it's all risk-based, right?
Absolutely.
And I love that story, Gabe, because we have one too where we did a tabletop, what's called a tabletop exercise to test people's, and it was the incident, but then it went into disaster, right? The disaster recovery. And so marketing was there and all the different business unit was there. And we started going around the table. It's like, okay, who needs to come up first, right?
Right.
Marketing said, I have to have my stuff first. And so it was like, you mean you need to have your paper, what part of that? And then all of a sudden it's like this, like, hold on, wait, what is really important to our business? And just like you said, 20 minutes or we're going to lose millions of dollars. It's kind of crazy. So
it is, it's very crazy.
Having those discussions is really important.
So the incident response plan is, agreed, it's important because we want to practice makes perfect, and we want to have as few variables in any kind of disaster situation, right? It's the same reason we run like fire drills, so there's no questions that we're trying to find the answer to under pressure. Could you talk about how maybe incident response planning affects or relates to cyber liability insurance as well?
Go ahead.
So I'll take that for just a second and then pass it over to you, Gabe.
Sure.
So we do a lot, and Gabe said it at the very beginning, risk assessments, right? So TowerWall does a lot of risk assessments, and again, walk alongside our clients in their cybersecurity journeys, because it's certainly not a destination. And so now with cyber insurance, and we do a lot of review of cyber people's policies, because people don't know what's in their policies. So, you know, what Quorum does, the backups, right? They need to have solid backups. They need to have an incident response plan. Those are requirements now. They need to have MFA. They need to have intrusion detection prevention technology. There's certain things that they have to have, and that incident response plan is really important. And they need to understand, putting in their incident response plan, who to contact in the cyber insurance. We had a client that got hit on a Friday night, and they had no incident response plan. And they had no idea who to contact in their cyber insurance organization. And so it went down until Monday. It was crazy. And so now they do have an incident response plan, and they do know who to contact. So I'm sure you have something to add to that, Gabe.
Yeah, going right back on, just to piggyback on that, you not only need to know who you contact outside, but who's going to own that contact and who their backup is. I had a customer maybe 2 years ago. The person who was in charge of it was the IT manager, and he was on a flight to the Bahamas, and they didn't set who the backup was. So they didn't know, okay, well, Bob's out, who do I call? That has to go right along with it. You have to have a person and a backup, and then those have to be revisited on a much more frequent basis than your actual whole plan, because those roles change, people move on, people change jobs. And so having that person and that backup have to be constantly reviewed, and make sure that everyone knows who owns what. That whole idea of a call tree, or you call it a tabletop or a DR walkthrough, those things all have to be known from top to bottom, is who's doing what, who's calling who, and not only who the cyber insurance is, but can I email them? Can I text them? Can I call them? You know, what the whole plan is for all of those things. Those are all really important to this. And I know that, Michelle, you touched on another piece, that was the risk assessment. I can't stress risk assessments enough, because they really help people understand where their pain points are. I'll give you a good example. Is my old company used to travel to Colorado a lot for business trips, and the entire executive team would be on the same flight. And we went through the risk assessment. We're like, okay, you can't do that. Like, we're telling our customers you can't do that. Why are you doing that? And it was a wake-up call for them, because if that plane, heaven forbid, has a problem, or if the company has a problem when all of them are unavailable, you're caught. So,
and do you know what, Gabe? And 9/11 is a great example of that, right?
perfect example.
So Akamai is one of our partners, and they lost their whole senior team at 9/11, because they were all on those planes.
Yep.
So, you know, and that's a true fact, right? And that's kind of redundant, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, for sure.
And another a piece to that. So we actually did, again, a tabletop exercise, and somebody has to do business in Bermuda, so TowerWall does. And we had escalated. It was a ransomware, and it had attacked their website. It was an insurance company in Bermuda, and so it got escalated up to the C-suite. And so we tropped up the hill and got around a table, and at the end, the CEO wasn't there. So just what you were saying, Gabe, you know, who's second in command? And it was like a hot potato. You know, the CFO was throwing it back to legal, and legal was throwing it to the COO, and it just went back and forth, because nobody wanted to make the decision to pull the plug.
It's the hardest thing to make the call. It's the hardest thing.
Great. And those are a number of examples of where people might be vulnerable if they don't have you know, all the details of the incident response plan nailed down. Maybe for me and anyone else who on the call who still might be confused, a lot of this sounds like DR planning. Could you guys maybe just highlight again the distinct difference in a good incident response plan and having a good DR plan?
I'll give you a good story. So we've had a customer for many years. They've been a solid customer. We have backups of their servers. Their process to recover their servers is very straightforward. You spin them up on the appliance and you go. They got ransomware, and because they didn't have their incident response plan, they didn't know what to do company-wide. The DR plan was there. It was ready to go, right? Turn on the servers and you get back up and running. But the decisions they had to make on the other side, on the cybersecurity side, how did they get in? How are we dealing with this? How are we addressing communication? And those things hadn't been thought of. So the IT guy was like, just tell me when you're done and I'll pull the trigger. But the incident response was a disaster, and it took them 4 days to just figure out what they wanted to do. That's the difference between an incident response plan and a disaster recovery plan. A disaster recovery plan are the steps I need to recover the stuff. An incident response plan are the steps the company needs to do, right? They're different.
And then I would add to, you know, the incident response plan is IT, but it's also PR, it's HR, it's finance, it's all of those people. So it's not just one. And you know, it's the incident response plan. And then what we do is we build out playbooks, and those playbooks are, you know, the exact steps. If you have a ransomware attack, we have a customer who's now a customer, but the company that he was at before didn't have an incident response plan, and they were a big distribution company. And so it was the end of the month and they got hit by ransomware. Ooh. It hit one system, and the CLO, because they needed to get stuff out, right? That's the only way they were going to make money. And so he said, you know what? Just try to contain it. We're going to keep shipping. And it kept jumping, and it was jumping, and it was jumping, and their whole network, I just got goosebumps, was shut down. And it didn't even have to do with disaster recovery. They couldn't recover because they were so crippled. And so they really go hand in hand, but you need that incident response so that people understand how important it is. And if they had stopped it at the very beginning, they would have been okay, because all plans would have been okay, but they didn't. And he made a really bad decision. And that gentleman that now is a new company in a customer, I can tell you right now, he has an incident response plan.
Tough lesson, sounds like. Just a reminder for anyone who's on the webinar today, if you have a specific question or topic that you'd like to address before we wrap up today, please just send it through via chat or the Q&A. And again, I'll get it to Michelle and Gabriel. One final question I have, just kind of as you guys were speaking here, if I'm an IT manager on the call and I feel like I have a pretty good backup and recovery software in place, but I'm not so sure I have a good DR plan or maybe a good incident response plan, what are some specific actions I could take to, you know, learn more or to start setting up one or improving it?
Oh, loaded question. There's lots. There's a tremendous amount of options that are available to you. Pulling in somebody like Michelle's whole team would be really ideal, right? They do this for a living. They know how to walk you through it. That's first and foremost. If you decide to go it on your own, good luck to you. But the things you're going to have to cover, the first thing you need to do is get buy-off from the executives in your company. You need everyone to be on the same page of what's important. And then I would start with a risk assessment and then walk my way through, and you know, the IRP, and then DR would be the last piece on my list. So that would build my BCP, and then it becomes an issue of, you know, training and education and testing and all that stuff. So those are what I would do, but I would start with experts.
And you're absolutely right, because you can try to do it on your own, but it's just more efficient, and having, you know, one of our consultants or somebody else's consultants kind of walk alongside you to make that happen. And another thing that we really haven't talked about is the tech stack, right? So what are the tools that you need to be able to do the discovery, and there's a whole bunch of different tools. If you would ask me 4 or 5 years ago, if small, SMB organizations needed 24/7 monitoring, I probably would have said, not so much. But now everybody does. It doesn't matter if you're 5 people or, 15,000 people. You need somebody to monitor you. You need a good backup system. You need great endpoint protection. You need, a good firewall. And now, because we're working from home, right? We need to test to make sure that, the clean desk policy that you have at work is the clean desk policy that you have at home, and your employees' kids are not on your employees' technology, right?
Yeah.
And now bringing stuff into your network. So again, having the right tools are so important, in documenting those as well, and then that gives the visibility to your IT team. So if you get ransomware, it stops it, right? It notifies you. If you have technology that now learns patterns of behavior, right? So Michelle only touches these 40 files in a day. And now all of a sudden, Michelle is touching 10,000 because I just gave my notice, right? Now there's technology that is there that you can, be notified because it's there. I mean, it's there. There is there, I guess, is the thing. And so again, the backup piece and recovery, testing that. There's so many organizations that don't test all that stuff, and you don't want every shiny new toy because they all fight. And so we need to utilize the technology that we have and be very thoughtful and intentional on how and what we're doing. And it's not one size fits all.
Agreed.
One question that came through: are there IRP templates available that someone might use, or is it best to contact an organization and work with them directly?
Anything's on Google, but that's not where I would go.
Nav or Chat GPT, there you go. So yes, you can use templates. You have to be so careful. So we do everything custom for our clients. So it's an interview process, multiple interview process, because what happens with templates is that if you have it in writing and you're not following it, it can cause great harm. So you need to make sure it's right-sized for you. We just walked into an organization recently where the CISO that was there came from State Street and he wrote State Street policies for a 50-user organization. That is not right-sized. An acceptable use policy that was 40 pages. Who is going to read that? And maybe for State Street, that's perfect, but it is not appropriate. So again, templates are there, but you have to be very, very careful when utilizing them.
Yeah, there's a workflow that you follow, that when you're doing these kind of BCP plannings, these IRPs or your DR planning, the workflow really walks you through what, as any other workflow would. What are my goals in this? What am I trying to protect? What are my expectations? What are my, can't think of the word, things that I need to have to make sure that I'm going to succeed at this. Those all have to be agreed upon as a company. And that has to be, that buy-in is a key factor. I worked with a company so we used to do security pen testing back before it was a thing, when Wi-Fi was brand new. So I'm going to date myself here a little bit. And this credit union we were working with set up Wi-Fi for their customers. Oh, we have Wi-Fi, come to us. Well, it was on the inside of their network. And I'm like, dude. So I went with my security expert and we sat in their parking lot and we hacked into their computer and we walked into the meeting with their CEO. And we said, Bob, your password is this. And you just watch the blood drain from his face. And it's these, again, expectations versus what you think you need are different things. And so walking through that procedure is the key to a successful plan. A template's not going to give you that discovery. It's just not. It's going to probably point you in directions, but it takes a lot of people getting around a table and talking through this stuff and having experts that hear those trigger words. Wait, you need what? That's where you need a different approach. On the backup side for the DR planning and what we specialize in at Quorum, it's really easy for us to say, it's simple. You just do these things and you're done. But it's only a piece of the puzzle, and it's really hard for people, because I've built some DR plans for some of our customers to really get them going. And it's not a full IRP, but I have to include it because you can't have a DR plan in a bubble. And so you have these conversations with people, and the discoveries you make are always the key factor. Talking to a teller at a bank of what their expectations are versus a loan officer versus a bank president are different conversations, and what they think is important are different things. And so having that kind of thought process is really what's going to help you build a successful plan.
And you nailed it. You said, what's important, right? What is that data? Because we can't protect everything.
Right.
And so, what are, the crown jewels? We have a kind of what they call it, the onion, and it's all about risk, right? And that's the center. That's right in the center is the, what's important, what do we need to protect, and then you start building things around it. I mean, so Gabe, you'll laugh. So we did our first pen test in 1999. It looks a little different today.
Right. They're very different.
But you know what, and Chris, you said this, so it's that incident response plan, it's the disaster recovery plan, and then it's business continuity. And when we were talking about earlier, even though COVID's 3 years away, we all lived business continuity that March day, right? And so we told all our customers, write down exactly what you did, and let's do a lessons learned from that. What did you do good? What did you do bad? What could we change? And so you use those as learning and lessons learned type stuff in whatever it is, whether it's an incident, whether it's a disaster, and so if we can again document and make things repeatable, it's really important.
Yeah, and it shouldn't just be repeatable, but it should be evolving.
Right. It's a living document.
Yeah, our test criteria for my first DR plan that we made. So we had, we're going to test a single file failure. We're going to test a server failure, blah, 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 blah. Well, now it's very different, because one of our tests for DR planning was a meteor hits your data center. Well, now you have ransomware. Now you have, it's not just getting hacked, which was the thing back then, or a virus. Ransomware is a real deal, and it's everywhere. And if you don't have that as one of your testing criteria, you're failing yourself. So what you're testing needs to evolve as much as what you're protecting. So you need to consider that.
Well, thanks, Gabriel. Thanks, Michelle. I really appreciate you leading us through the conversation. Thanks to everyone who attended the webinar as well. I appreciate the participation and questions. If you have some questions that you didn't ask or think of some afterwards, we'll be following up with you, and I'll be happy to connect you with Gabriel or Michelle as appropriate to discuss further.
Perfect.
Thank you very much. And thanks for inviting me. I really enjoyed this. I appreciate it.
Me as well. Take care, everybody.
Okay, take care. Talk soon. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.